It is the Pop Culture Junkie podcast. On this episode, we have a special guest, award-winning photographer, director, and musician, Jim Louvau.
Fill me up with a barrel full of monkeys, 'cause I hate being bored, I hate being bored. Load me up 'cause I'm such a junkie. Every day all I want is more. So entertain me right now. So entertain me right now.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, recording as we do every week at Olympus Games in Mesa, Arizona for the Pop Culture Junkie podcast. I am Shauna, and I am joined by my fellow junkies,
Haley
and Nicole.
Today, we are happy to welcome Jim Louvau, who is an acclaimed photographer, music video director, and self-described noisemaker. Jim has directed a video for Jerry Cantrell, formerly of Alice in Chains, and he has photographed rock music legends like the late Chester Bennington, Maynard James Keenan of Tool, and A Perfect Circle, and the beautiful Kat Von D. Jim is also a musician, performing with the band There Is No Us. Welcome, Jim. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is super exciting. First of all, because we don't get as many in-person guests as we would like. But second, because you're like a rock star. I feel like I'm in the presence of rock royalty right now.
I drove really far.
We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. We get a lot of Zoom interviews. It's nice to look at people.
And you're verified on Instagram, so that's pretty cool too.
How does that feel, having that blue check mark? Is it nice?
It feels the same way it did before. There.
Beautiful. So tell us how you got started. I mean, it was photography your first passion? Was it music? What's your background?
Well, they kind of go hand in hand. I remember being really young, and as a kid, I would have to be literally pulled by my grandparents and my mom to go to the grocery store. And I would never be the person that would go with the family around in the cart. I wanted to go to the magazine section. And I loved rock and roll music from the time I can remember. So rock and roll magazines were something that grabbed my attention immediately. And as I started opening them and like really getting into that whole sort of thing, I obviously saw a lot of photos. And I was like, I'll go to the grocery store if I can read these magazines. And then instead of buying things that most kids would ask for at the grocery store, like, hey, mom or grandma, I like bananas. I'm like, I want Metal Edge magazine.
Love it. When did you get your first camera then? Was it like the disposables, just taking pictures around the house? Or
No, I really didn't pick up a camera until I was probably a senior in high school. And the only reason that I ever really started that whole process is because there was a point where the electives were all taken up. You only take PE so many times because that was like the easiest thing ever. And really outside of music, like I come from sports and athletics of sorts, but I eventually became too short, skinny, and, that whole world kind of went out the window in a hurry. But beyond that, like music was my passion, and I was already going to shows by the time I had taken that photo class my senior year. And so it just made sense for me to try to explore that option because I was already going to shows locally and nationally by the time, I was well beyond going to shows by the time I was, 16 or 17. So it was a bit of a natural transition for me to go into the arts of sorts.
yeah, actually start taking pictures of the shows you're going to and such, right?
Yeah, but my teacher at the time, like when I got really involved in taking photos of local bands, really there was one band in particular out here that me and my friends grew up with called N17. They were kind of like, I come from a pretty heavily metal and industrial goth world. And N17 was like the local rock stars of that scene. And they were friends of ours. Like, you start going to see bands when there's 15 people showing up at the shows and they're really excited to see you because there's no one there. These guys got to a point where they were drawing really big crowds, and I happened to be taking this photo class, and I happened to have a camera that I borrowed from a friend. And that's kind of how this whole thing started.
Oh, that's so cool that it started with friends and people that you know. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. That is really cool. And it's interesting that you talk about like local bands and stuff, because I know kind of growing up, I always felt like to do anything entertainment related. It's almost like you were fed this thing of like, you got to go to LA or you got to be in New York. But like just going to local shows and kind of getting your start that way, it kind of shows, anybody could get into it if they wanted to.
That's right.
Phoenix has a great music scene I don't think a lot of people appreciate all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was also really different when I was a kid. Like right now, it's not nearly what it was in the past. So I would absolutely say that it's not terrible now, but it's nothing compared to what it was before. It's almost terrible.
So many like cool local venues have closed down in the past couple of years too that are really disappointing.
The world's a different place.
It really is.
It really is.
How difficult is it to shoot concerts where the artists are always moving on stage and continuously just doing things on stage to make it hard for like the actual picture to be clear and focused?
It's not hard if you have...
The right stuff.
Well, no, the stuff is irrelevant. It's just learning how to use the stuff. So I'll give you like a really good comparison here. So if I walk into a camera store, the cameras that I see like in the boxes on the wall, I don't get excited about that at all. It's how you use the tools that you have. So if you can take a really old camera and go into a very dimly lit venue for a local act, and you can still come away with stuff that's cool, then there's probably a pretty good chance you can do it in the arena or like the theater. But yeah, I mean, cameras, instruments, they're all tools, but it really goes back to how you use them.
It's interesting. My husband and I always joke that like everyone and their mom is a photographer now because of iPhones and Lightroom
Instagram
presets and whatever it is. Yeah. So I know you talk about the music scene isn't what it once was. Do you feel like photography and like that field has gotten better and more exciting and more competitive now? Or do you feel like those things have maybe kind of drained the hobby?
I have no idea because I don't pay attention to anything like that. I don't really pay attention to what other people are doing.
So no like Instagram pressures,
Trending.
the trending pressures.
No, like I don't even who makes that like I
The
don't.
youth's Jim.
Yeah, well, they're thinking too much about it. I mean, at the end of the day, like no matter what it is, like good art or good music or whatever medium is going to win.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're thinking about it more than that, then you're stuck in some really terrible place that's a very small box in your head that is unfortunate that you feel that way.
Well, I checked out your Instagram and it doesn't seem like you have many problems because your work just looks incredible. I looked at your most recent post that you put of Kat Von D and it just looks incredible. You're just very good at what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So how did you go from local bands to Kat Von D? Like, what was that trajectory like?
Oh, it was like 20 years. No, literally.
Like blood, sweat, and tears?
Like, yeah. I mean, basically, I feel like a lot of people feel like when you're first kind of getting your feet wet in this, that the goals or like where you're trying to get to go seems so impossible because they kind of are. But at the end of the day, if you kind of keep doing the thing that you're doing, whether you're a photographer, a painter, a musician, a producer, a mixer, if you just keep doing your craft and you keep working on it and you don't let the outside world distract you from like your passion, you're eventually going to get to go where you're trying to be. But there's so many things in life that can steer you from that path, whether it's relationships, children's, marriages, family stuff, jobs. There's so many things that can take you away from where you started. But at the same time, a lot of people, they kind of go on different paths because they're not as interested or their passions change. For someone like me, my interests and passions never changed, and I had the other stuff, whether it's relationships, family, children, the world doing a complete 180. All of those things like never really took me away from what I enjoy doing. So that's how you go from starting out as a kid in high school to getting to Kat Von D is the example you used.
So let's talk about your music a little bit. You mentioned that's your first passion. You're in a band now called There Is No Us, right?
I am.
I mean, what instrument do you play? Are you the singer? What part in the band do you take part in?
So in that particular project, I am the vocalist, which all that music is very, very heavy. It's a really good way for me to express myself with my mouth. Some people like to express themselves on the internet with their mouth and their fingertips. I like to yell at things and do it in a way that doesn't feel like your neighbor's doing it. And I can yell a lot louder than your neighbor can type, no matter what they're typing.
I don't know. My neighbors are pretty noisy. No, that's awesome. How long have you guys been together for?
Goodness, I think we're like going on 5 or 6 years.
Awesome.
And then I just started a brand new project with Richard Patrick from Filter. Filter's been around forever. Obviously everyone knows Came In, I Shot, and Take a Picture. And he was in Nine Inch Nails before he was in Filter. So we're in this new thing called A Place to Kill, awesome. Which we just finished our debut EP, and we're about to shoot a couple videos in a couple weeks. So,
how exciting.
Yeah, so I kind of jump around from different mediums, but, at the end of the day, it took me so long to be able to say out loud, I make art. This is what I do.
Yeah.
I don't have a day job. I don't do anything besides photography, music, and directing videos. So
that's so cool. That's so cool. So wait, let's talk about directing videos. So Shauna mentioned you directed that video for Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains.
We've actually done 2 videos for Jerry Cantrell now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What is that experience like compared to like still photography? Do you prefer one over the other?
Well, I had been taking photos as a photographer for a long time before I started directing. So I don't think that I could possibly do one without the other because they go hand in hand. At the end of the day, your eye for that sort of thing is something that you either have or you don't. It's not something I feel like you could teach somebody. But yeah, going from one to the other was a pretty natural process for me. But getting to the point where you're basically 2 years into your video career, where you're working with someone like Jerry, was pretty amazing.
So in that case, even that specific case, does he come to you with like a concept already and then it's up to you to just kind of execute it, or do you come up with a concept?
So the way that entire process kind of worked with Jerry's first video that we did, so this was for the video that we did called A Tone. That was Jerry's first solo record in like quite some time. And in the video world, I have a partner. His name is Tony Aguilera. He's a really close friend of mine. He's kind of my other half of this situation. And the first thing that we ever did together was a video for Greg Bachado, who is the former vocalist for Dillinger Escape Plan. And he was doing a video for his first actual music video for his first solo thing. And I remember he had reached out to me, and I was in Vegas at the time, and he asked me about it. Like, hey, have you ever done a video before? And I was like, I think I did one that never came out like a long time ago, but I'm 110% positive that I could do it. So when I was thinking about trying to find somebody else to kind of help me do this, Tony was the first one that I thought of, because like Tony and I were like, we were friends, and we knew each other, but like we hadn't really worked together overly a ton at that point. We had never done any video stuff together, but I knew he was really good with lighting, and he had done some video stuff prior. So long story short, Greg ended up singing on this Jerry Cantrell record called Brighton that was also produced by one of our friends, Tyler Bates, who, Tyler's done, he scored everything you can think of. Like, he's done like every John Wick.
Oh, wow.
Guardians of the Galaxy and all sorts of stuff. So it was really weird that Tyler and Jerry were neighbors.
Oh.
And then Greg was a friend of mine before any of that. And after we had done a couple of videos with Greg, he was kind of like, I really wanted to try to get you to do this first Jerry Cantrell video. And so we kind of talked about it a little bit, and Tony and I were in LA, and then we went over to Jerry's house and chatted with him for 10 or 15 minutes about the overall concept and what he was looking for. Kind of like a Clint Eastwood, like, badass, like aging in a cool way, like rock and roll video for this song. And, the video is it's pretty bitchin'.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go watch that later tonight. That's awesome.
That's so cool.
What exciting projects do you have coming up? What's next on the plate?
Rich, Patrick, and I, for the new thing called Place to Kill, we're going to do our first 2 videos in about a week and a half. So that's what I've been working on for really the past 3-4 weeks. I was doing a ton of pre-production for that. And then I think the 2nd and the 3rd of September, I'm going to Red Rocks to shoot a couple shows for 9 Inch Nails.
Oh, that's so
which
cool.
is cool. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to see 9 Inch Nails in Riot Fest in Chicago next month. I'm so excited.
Awesome.
Oh, man. Bought those tickets before the pandemic. And finally it's happening.
So do you travel every week going to different shows?
So it's crazy. This is the longest. Well, its shows are kind of like, so the second video that I did with Jerry Cantrell, we put it out maybe like a month and a half ago, but I was on tour with him for 10 shows off and on. I was doing this record with Rich, and the day that I finished was the day that I jumped back on the Cantrell tour. So that video is like over the course of like 10 shows. I went to New York and Boston and Atlantic City and Philadelphia and other places I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is the longest I've been home in a couple of years. So I'm itching to do anything outside of the old 602-480-623.
So I imagine the pandemic was like pretty brutal in that regard.
Nope. That's actually when I started directing videos. Oh. So totally out of left field. If Greg would have never reached out about doing the first thing, I might be working at Starbucks right now.
Wow.
I do think that the pandemic was, I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it, obviously, it fucking sucked, but it was a great opportunity for people to find new avenues to express themselves and be creative, you know, and find things they might not be passionate about, whether it's making batches of banana bread or, you know, exploring directing videos. Like, I thought it's cool seeing so many people be creative during that time.
Mm-hmm. Or like just shift gears. I quit my job. Well, kind of. I shifted.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of creative people kind of throwing the towel and kind of going back to the local scene here in Phoenix, Arizona area. Like so many of the people I knew that were playing music completely, you know, kind of took a break from that. And then when the world kind of went back to normal, like, I don't know, maybe I was doing this longer than I should have, or like maybe this whole thing is a lot harder than I originally signed up for.
Yeah.
And that's interesting too, because it goes back to like what you were saying about just like finding your passion and sticking with your passion. I mean, I do think that's a difficult thing to do for a lot of people, is just kind of finding what you feel, whether it's like a calling or just whatever you're drawn to do. So it's kind of easy to be like jack of all trades, master of none. So when you find that thing, it's like,
I prefer to be a master of none.
So do you have a favorite artist or concert show that was your favorite to shoot?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like your children. I have so many experiences that are special to me. I also look at photos I've taken over the years, and I am completely taken right back to when I shot them. And if it's like a portrait type thing where I remember the interaction I had with the artist, there's so many different feelings and situations. They're all different. But I mean, I love shooting my favorite bands. Like the first time I shot Radiohead was pretty amazing. Getting to do that a couple times was great. Worked with 9 Inch Nails a bunch now, which is awesome. That's the thing. Without sounding terrible, like the list of that goes on for quite a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
so are you at the point now, blue check verified, where people
That I shouldn't have driven this far to do this podcast?
Yes.
Yeah. That too.
That too. No, where like people will reach out to you, artists will reach out to you and say, hey, I want to work with you. Or are you usually the one that kind of like extends that?
No, it happens all the time. The artists.
That's cool.
There are very few times. And the thing about being an artist at all, I see a lot of younger photographers who really think that they're entitled to like that their stuff's that good that everything they shoot, they should get paid some crazy amount for. But in the real world, they're not that special. I mean, if I'm just being honest, I see it every day. You know if your stuff is good enough when people reach out to you. I'm someone that, unless I'm testing out a light, I'm testing out something I want to do, I don't have time to reach out to people just to do something for fun. And I do miss that, because there's times where having that freedom to just kind of do something for fun goes a long ways, like creatively. But it has to fit into the schedule too, which is the hard part. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's always someone reaching out to me, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
It also looks like you've done photography for live shows for artists that you may personally not have attended the show otherwise. Has it opened you to new genres of music that you wouldn't have otherwise listened to, or like an appreciation for, you know, some kind of pop music or country music that you might not have been into before?
Nope. No, the thing is that at the end of the day with show stuff, if something is interesting to look at, no matter what it sounds like you can take like something like Miley Cyrus. She's a great subject. You can take something that's really big. Let me think of an example here. Let me keep on things that I would never listen to that visually were exciting. It could be Garth Brooks. You know, Garth Brooks puts on a really good show. I'm never going to listen to the Garth Brooks music.
No.
I've got enough friends in low places to last me a lifetime. You know, so there's that. But you'll occasionally, like, I shot Beyonce and I had 60 seconds to do it. That was like pretty early on in my journey. Can you imagine going to do your job? Imagine if I walked in here, I was like, you guys have 60 seconds to ask me whatever you want and hope I can get through it.
Oh, man. Just sweating, hoping we don't fuck it up.
Yeah, but that's...
And then Beyonce leaves the building.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is like, you know, photography in that realm, I don't have a favorite photographer at all. Like, I don't look at other people's stuff because, well, I'll look at it, but so much of it is about the access. So if you're able to go backstage and take photos of whoever, then of course, like, you're the only one that got to do that. So the stuff is special. For me, it's like, if you know how to work your camera and you know how to expose something, then a lot of people could have taken that photo. But for some reason, whether it's, hey, my uncle or my wife or my nephew or whoever was the one that was allowed to take this photo, they were the ones that were allowed that access. So to me, it's kind of like anyone could have done that, but that person was allowed to be there. Yeah. You know, and I've been in that situation a lot on my own where it's like, I know that I'm the only one that can get this tonight. That never makes me feel better about myself as a photographer. I just know that on this given night, I was the guy.
I know you talked about kind of that being busy and not having as much time for kind of creative exploration. Do you feel like you have found your style, or do you feel like your style is constantly evolving?
It's got to evolve. I get so bored. I'm so bored. Like, I don't like looking at anything I've done recently or going back. If I go back and look at something I did a long time ago, I could have done this better now. And art is so subjective. So that's the other part about trying to find other people's stuff that you like. It's totally different in the photo world. I can go watch music videos that are incredible, and that happens every day. And I'm like, this is amazing. I don't know how they did this. With photography, I can kind of figure it out.
You're like, I know how they did this.
Or if I don't, I could figure it out, you know? So it's just a different world, if that makes sense.
And welcome back to the Pop Culture Junkie podcast. We are joined by Jim Louvau. Thanks for sticking around for the second half, Jim.
Thanks. I need an Uber ride home. It's really, I'm going to say it's really fun.
We're going to put in a cash collection to the comic book shop after this to get you home, so don't you worry.
If we sell enough Pokemon cards. Do they do that still? Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you hear them all shouting out there, they're playing either Pokemon or like Magic the Gathering, one of those things.
That's crazy.
Absolutely.
You know, like my passion outside of like what I do is pinball and video games, but really pinball.
That's awesome.
That's something good to talk about.
Yeah. Do you
Okay,
have
let's
like
dive into that.
pinball machines at your house then?
I have a pinball machine in the studio,
Oh.
in my studio downtown.
What kind is it?
It's called the Black Knight. And my great friends over at Stardust Pin Bar Lounge thing.
Stardust Pin Lounge.
No, they brought over a punch-out machine, and we have a little one-up NBA Jam machine in there,
that's awesome.
and this Black Knight pinball machine, which is awesome. So whenever we have like people in the studio, like doing videos or photos, like it's a really cool kind of thing for if you're working with a band of 4 or 5 people and someone's not doing a take and you don't want them just to sit there bored. There's options for them to entertain themselves. So it's also a really good way for Tony and I to kind of rest our eyes when we need a break from like an edit or just kind of getting away from something.
Oh, yeah. I imagine you have a lot of eye strain.
A lot of screen time, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my attention to detail is really strong, but the keeping me focused for very long is really hard. And I think as I've kind of gotten older, I realized that, which is a good thing to know about yourself. But I have to take a break visually after a certain amount of time. And then like 10 or 15 minutes go by and then I'm ready to jump back in. But I can't just stare at something for a long time because I need a break. I do it all the time with photo stuff when I'm working on stuff at home. If I have something I think is really cool, I'll go back and look at it in the morning and see if I thought it was as cool as I did at 9:30 at night.
I was going to say, how long does the editing process take? Because that would take me a million years, obviously, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But like for someone who's a professional, you shoot a Nine Inch Nails concert. How long is the editing process for those photos?
So it's crazy. A lot of my initial work came from the local newspaper scene.
It's like I've seen you in the Arizona Republic a number of times.
Yeah, that stuff had to be turned around like immediately. So if they need 15 photos, I'm leaving the show. Sometimes, if I'm not staying, if it's something I'm not into, or I just don't have a ticket, I go home and the stuff has to be turned around by 6 in the morning.
Wow.
So the difference between shooting for a publication and shooting for Nine Inch Nails, like you said, is I'll go take 1,500 photos of a Nine Inch Nails show that they let me shoot the whole show. Yeah. And I'll wake up the next day and go, oh man, I got 1,500 photos to go through. And I'll spend like 2 hours going through them and really getting them to a place that I think they're exciting. And then I send them over. But I would never be afforded that amount of time going through like an Arizona Republic. And they're not looking for anything other than like there's not a whole lot of black and white. It's just kind of like
highlights.
This
from the
is
show.
what it. Yeah. And I ran into that. I lived in that world for a long time. And if anything, I feel like while it was really, really great to be able to shoot so many different artists and be working on a consistent basis, artistically, it wasn't doing anything for me after a certain amount of time. Where it's like, all right, I know what this looks like. I'm going to give you your 15 photos. 3 or 4 of them are going to be of the crowd, but it's not going to be something I would do if it was just for me.
So you don't have to name any names, but nightmare, bad experiences with artists.
You can name names.
I mean, well, we're not going to stop you, but we're not going to force you.
No, the only time I really have a really, are we allowed to curse on this? Can I say shitty?
Yes.
So the only time some dickheads, shitty, I shot the Mars Volta, goodness, probably in like 2009 or 10.
They were dickheads?
Well, they were playing at the Dodge Theater, and, I think that place holds like 4,000 people. They were playing in front of maybe 1,200 people. And their singer came out and immediately just turned his back to the photographers.
Oh, my God.
And within like 30 seconds, security came and pulled us all out. But he literally didn't face us once.
Wow.
And I was like, cool, man. Fuck, this will be the story. This will be the story forever. You're the fucking guy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Now, with that said, I saw their side project, Anti-Mask, at the Crescent, like maybe 5 years later. They were incredible. But that's the thing. It all comes back to one thing. If you're really great, you can be an asshole. And if you're not really great, you can't be an asshole. So even though I think that guy's a complete asshole, I would love to run into him and I would tell him that story. He'd probably apologize. Or maybe it would probably be better if he didn't.
He's just like, yeah, I'm a dick. I know.
Yeah. That's the sort of thing that you're like, hey, you're really great at what you do. You're afforded a certain amount of free passes of sorts. But he was a dick.
I feel like a lot of celebrities probably try to take that a little too far. Like, oh, I'm really good or I'm super famous, so I can be an asshole to the normal people.
Yeah, but like that's the thing is like typically, and this is a question I get asked all the time, everyone's an asshole unless you're working with them. And like when you're shooting a concert for a band like that, you're not working with them, you're capturing their show.
Yeah.
When I'm taking portraits of somebody and I'm spending an hour with them or maybe longer, you're actually engaging and you're having a good experience with those people or that person or that band. That's a completely different thing than shooting 3 songs at a photo pit, you know, at a Mars Volta show. So with that said, if I was ever going to shoot them in a portrait setting, he would never remember that. And he would probably be really friendly. And I would tell him, he'd probably laugh.
Yeah.
And then I would laugh too and be like, yeah, like you were that guy that night. So other than that, like I haven't really had any, you know, I mean, the 60-second Beyonce thing, that was like a big learning curve. If you can get in 60 seconds, then you're probably okay at this. Like you might be able to like do this as a career of sorts.
Yeah.
Are there any bands or musicians that you haven't worked with yet, haven't shot yet, I should say, that you would love to?
Not live, really. It's crazy. Like when I used to think about these lists of shows I wanted to shoot, and I did them all, and I did a lot of them over and over again.
Yeah. Any bands from back in the day that don't exist anymore, might be dead, that you would
Yeah,
want to shoot?
it would. The first would be Nirvana.
Yes.
You know, which is crazy because I saw Nirvana at the fair when I was a kid.
At the fair, I think the Arizona State Fair?
Yeah, on the
man.
first show of the Euro tour, and that was pretty crazy to me to be there for that at such a young age. And you know, I get asked all the time if there was like one musician that isn't alive anymore who like you want to shoot it. I always say Kurt, and if it wasn't Kurt, it'd be Freddie Mercury.
Oh man, that'd be iconic.
Good choices.
Yeah. But I did shoot like Queen with Adam Lambert. So like I took photos of Brian May playing the We Will Rock You solo at the end of a catwalk like 3 or 4 years ago. And I've taken photos of Dave Grohl playing the drums and doing Foo Fighter stuff. So it would definitely be Nirvana as the number one.
Have you ever been at one of those shows and been like, man, I wish I could just put my camera away for a second so I could
No.
just like enjoy it? Or does it like add to your experience?
No. In fact, it's the opposite. I can't go watch a show anymore. I'm completely tainted by that. Especially like if there's something that happens in the first 3 songs of a show most of the time. And that rule kind of exists for a few different reasons. The first being people don't like looking sweaty and like haggard after 3 songs, especially for like the female artists. But then you're sitting in your seat at the end of the show and you're like, well, this is where all the photos should be taken. This stuff looks fucking awesome. But your camera's put away and you can't take it out, and it's a bummer. But, you know, there's plenty of times where I'm able to shoot an entire show, and I would rather be taking photos than sitting there watching.
You get to see the progression of the sweatiness when you do the whole show.
Right.
Especially in Phoenix.
Right.
That's right.
As long as you don't get the crowd. I've been to some music festivals and I'm like, I swear we're all sticking to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Unison.
Well, the crowd is like, that's the energy.
Yeah.
The sweatier, the better. I remember going to shows and back in the day, and like in my 20s, and I wanted a bruise every time. If I didn't get a bruise from like the pit, yeah, I would show up at like school the next day and be like, "Look at my bruise from the MSI show last night." And now, like, I have tickets for Ghost in a couple weeks, and I'm like, I'm probably gonna be kind of towards the back, maybe a beverage in hand. Like, I don't need to be bruised anymore.
Brew. That was never a goal.
So you mentioned you play video games.
Yeah.
What are you playing?
I play all sports games.
All sports games.
Yep. Outside of music, sports is my passion. Sports games are always cool because like you never knew how they were going to end. Mm-hmm. So it's funny. We have a Nintendo Switch and I play the NBA 2K22. My voice is so deep tonight, by the way. And my wife looks at me yesterday. She's like, I don't know why you do this. I hate this.
No.
And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, you know how it's going to, and I'm like, no. The whole point of these games is in a season, there's 82 games in a basketball season. And I don't know how it's going to end. After every game, if I was playing like, you know, I mean, obviously like I grew up on Mario and all sorts of old school NES games. I knew how to beat those games and I knew the ending every time.
Yep.
So when I got to sports games, I was like, well, I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know how I'm going to play. I don't know how it's going to end up. So to me, those were always like, the most exciting things. And then I got into pinball.
Okay.
And pinball is like golf, which I don't golf. Never golfed in my life.
I would absolutely prefer pinballing over
You
golfing.
could be really great at pinball for one game, and the next ball can be
Suck.
Yep. And it's like you never played before.
Are there professional pinballers?
Probably. But they're assholes. Probably. they think, yeah.
If you play pinball professionally, please reach out
us
to us.
up.
We want
Yeah.
we want to talk to
On
you.
the Pinball Junkie podcast. I got to go to the Pinball Hall of Fame, I think is what
In
it's called.
Vegas, right?
Vegas,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Half the games are broken, but,
Yeah.
There's
There's one in Portland, too. There's some other pinball something or other.
So speaking of sports, I went to school for sports journalism and I actually got to do a photography class, but then COVID hit, so I wasn't able to actually do it. But I don't know. Photography is just, I ended up really enjoying it for the 2 classes that I probably had from it before COVID. But
all 2.
yeah, but I was able to go to a spring training game for the Milwaukee Brewers, and it was just so much fun. Just the access and just the type of work you get to do with these players. It's just so cool and interesting that you get to see a different side and dynamic of these people.
Yeah, well, the athletes are, it's different with them because the musicians are definitely a little bit more into getting into character or being a little bit cheeseball.
Yeah,
The athletes don't know how to do that
that's true.
because they're typically the only thing they've ever done is play whatever sport. So I remember the first photo shoot that I did with an athlete was Daniel Hudson from the D-backs. And I think this is probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago. And it was during spring training. And I remember, I think I got like 10 minutes with him. And I remember being like a huge local sports fan, and the team was really relevant at the time, doing that and then walking away. And I was like, I don't know if that was good. And it's because the personality is different. I did a photo shoot with Devin Booker. I guess, goodness, this is going on 4 or 5 years ago. This was during preseason. I remember asking Devin Booker to put his hands up by his face like this. You can't see this like on the podcast.
His hands are by his face, you guys.
Yes. But he was so confused. Well, why do you want me to do that? And I'm like, you're not supposed to understand. You're supposed to be
it'll
the
look cool.
subject. Yeah, it's going to look cool, man. Like, I got you. And he was really confused by that, which showed me that he had never been asked by somebody to do more than hold a basketball or stand there. And our cover shoot turned out really cool, but I'll never forget that. He was very confused by that. Whereas if I ask someone who's not an athlete to do stuff, they're a lot more versed. And I'm sure if Devin saw what I was trying to get him to do, he would understand, but it was still a pleasant experience. And at the end of the day, if it turns out cool, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anybody come in and they're like, I want to do this pose and I want to do this and try to like direct you?
No.
Oh, that's good.
No.
That would drive me insane.
Because I would probably nod and smile, and then I wouldn't do any.
Do whatever you want.
That looks great. Now completely change everything, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with someone coming in with like an energy and an excitement, but let me do the thing.
Yeah. Have you had anybody, because I'm horrible at getting I hate getting my picture taken in general. I don't know if I don't like my face. I don't know. I just don't like
your
being-
face.
Does
Thank
anyone actually like their own face?
Yeah, well, and that's what I wonder is even with some of these celebrities, like, have you ever had anybody just be kind of uncomfortable or kind of awkward?
So that's the whole thing. So that's literally it in a nutshell. Like, that's what this whole thing is about being able to take somebody who doesn't like to do this and make them comfortable enough to get out of them what you're looking for. If you can do that, then you can do this forever. If you can't do that, then you have no chance.
I'm sure it's cool for them too. If like, oh, I don't like my face. I don't like the way I photograph. And then you show them like a sick picture you took of them and they're like, oh, wow. Okay, maybe.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Like
this
what?
looks pretty good.
Well, there's also just like a difference, like, again, going back to kind of doing things in a style of sorts. Sometimes I walk into these shoots and unless they're in my studio, I walk into like places, locations that I've never seen before. And I have to walk in and go, all right, what am I going to do with this? And how am I going to make this work? And how am I going to make it exciting for myself? Really, at the end of the day, I don't care who's on the other side of the camera. I want this to be exciting for myself because I'm the one that's going to have to live with this forever. And if you're shooting someone that's awesome, then you want to make it awesome for yourself and for them, because there's this thing that happens with photography in general that I could take an amazing photo of someone that no one recognizes, like something incredible, super artistic. It could be anything. And if it's someone that people don't recognize, no one engages with it because they're like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
You can take a really crappy photo of someone that people recognize and they think it's amazing. So I recognize that immediately. And I'm like, I don't just want to take some photo of this person because they're this person. I want to do something that excites me with this person because I have an opportunity to work with someone that's awesome and a great subject. And I want to take this thing and do something special with it. Because I never know if I'm ever going to work with them again. I don't know if I'm ever going to see them again. So I have that amount of time to work with that person. So to me, that is the thing. And you can't prepare in most situations for whatever location, whatever the vibe's going to be. You have no idea. So you have to be able to work really quick and you have to be able to pivot to whatever situation you're dealt with.
When you have somebody that you've worked with multiple times, like Kat Von D, is it always like, okay, what are we going to do next? I mean, does she come to you with a vision because you guys have worked just together so many times? Or is it like, we have to make it different than last time? Or is that one more of just the kind of, let's work on this together and make something fun?
Well, her in particular, like, she's really easy. She's a great subject. I remember when we worked together the first time, we did it at her house in Hollywood, and the house was incredible, so the location was great. But that was the first time that we had met. So it's really crazy when someone lets you into their home.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen all that often. Not when you don't know them. Now we go over to the house all the time and just hang out. It's fun. But it's one of those things where after the first one goes well, if the first one doesn't go well, you don't get a second one. If the second one, it's like you're constantly, I feel like you're always auditioning for each other at some point. After you've done a couple, it's like, well, what am I going to bring to the table this time? And I think that the subject feels the same way. But with her, like, she's so easy and we get along so well and we're friends that I can ask her to do stuff. Even when she doesn't know what I'm going to do, which the last shoot we did, a lot of the techniques that I used were different than anything she's ever done. So, like, normally when you're doing a photo shoot, the strobes go off. So you know that when you reset. Well, I was using constant lighting that time, so she never knew, and you couldn't hear the click because there was no. Oh. So she's like, I don't know what's going on, and I'm like, just trust me.
Trust
and then
the process.
Yeah. Trusting the process is that should be tattooed on lots of creative people's foreheads. But that was a great example of like, all right, so now we did it this way, so now you know that if we do it this way next time, that you're comfortable.
Very cool. Those pictures all turned out great, like Nicole mentioned earlier.
Thanks. Yeah, there's like a bunch of stuff that we haven't put out yet that might see the light of day at some point too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if people want to follow you, they want to learn more about your music, your photography, where can everybody find you?
Go on the Instagram. My name's Jim Louvau. That's JimLouvau.
We got so deep.
I know. The Batman.
Where are the drugs? And do your bands have Instagrams as well, or just kind of find them through your page?
It's There Is No Us Band and A Place to Kill, APTK. Watch out for that. It's coming soon.
Exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jim. It was a pleasure. And as for the Junkies, if people want to find y'all, where can they do that?
At rehab.
Yeah, I was gonna say don't bother finding me. Just find Jim. He's more exciting. No, you can find me Haley on Instagram at 30 Nerdy Thriving.
You can find me Nicole on Instagram and TikTok at Nicole_Eldridge and on Twitter at NAEldridge14.
And you can find me, Shauna Trinidad, on Instagram, Twitter, and unfortunately TikTok at Shauna Trinidad, ShaunaTrinidad. If you enjoy listening to us every week, show us your support. Tell your friends about us, subscribe, leave a review. If you really can't get enough of us and like want to extra show your support, we have a Patreon. You can get bonus episodes. Visit our webpage at popculturejunkie.com, where you can find the latest news and reviews, links to our socials, and listen to the podcast, buy our merch, all that good stuff. And as always, come back next week for another hit of pop culture.
Pop Culture Junkie is a production of Pop Culture Entertainment Group.